evening to you. Thank you for joining me on Citizen Weekend. And tonight it's about causes, vices, and deputies. What is it about being second in command that you just cannot afford to sit pretty? We'll have in studio Professor Macharia Monene, a historian, and we'll be having from New York joining virtually Professor David Monda, a political scientist. Do weigh in. My handle is @OBurrows. There is @Citizen TV Kenya, and the hashtag is Citizen Weekend. The highlights. Tragedy at Toy Market. 4 people dead in dawn fire. Angry traders chase away Nairobi Governor Johnson Sakaja. Same old, same old. Matatus behind Railway's bus terminus Apro carry on with business as usual, as police say they are investigating the matter.
Familia yote mzima karibu inafika milioni 5 kwa sababu kuna semeji, kuna dada, kuna mama.
Lured by the promise of quick returns. Eldoret man on the run after receiving millions of shillings from unsuspecting residents in alleged investment scam.
The good provisions which have been lost by this bill, which are not contentious, and there are many, which can still help this country grow the economy.
The opposition plays ball. John Mbadi and Opiyo Wandayi face the Committee on Appointments as vetting of CS nominees runs into the 3rd day. Tonight you have Olive Burrows and our sign language interpreter Yula Nzale. 4 people were burnt beyond recognition in a fire that razed Nairobi's toy market in Kibera early Saturday morning. A toy market leader said at least 800 million shillings worth of goods had been lost and 1,500 traders had lost their businesses. According to witnesses, the deceased were traders who were trying to salvage their goods when they were consumed by the dawn inferno. The following report has been produced by Gabrielle Mosa.
This was scenes at Toy Market Saturday evening. Nairobi Governor Johnson Sakaja being whisked away as he was pelted with stones by angry traders when he visited the scene. He was shielded by his bodyguards as he escaped. The traders refused to be addressed by the governor. The governor had walked into the charred remains of what is on an average day the busy toy market. Traders were counting their losses and trying to salvage whatever they could, ashes and scraps of metal. From these they hope to try and rebuild. Toy open-air market traders woke up to news of a fire that had broken out at about 5 a.m. It quickly spread, claiming the lives of 4 traders who were trying to retrieve what they could before their businesses went up in flames. They lost their lives. They had been in the darkness with the only source of light, the fire.
Hao wenye wamechomeka hao waine tulikuwa na wao. Mimi nashukuru tu Mungu nimetoka peke yangu. Sijui mbona Mungu ameniweka, hata mimi ningebebwa kwa gunia kama wao. Tumekuamba kwa dakika ya mwisho mzee wangu ndiye amenipigia simu, "Unachomeka kuja." Na akachukua miti akaanza kugonga mabati hapa, akasema tokeni nje mmeshafikiwa na moto. Ndio mimi nikatoka sasa nikawaambia tuendeni tunachomeka. Kumbe wao walibaki nyuma, nikatoka tu peke yangu.
This, they said, is the 3rd fire that has broken out in the last 5 years. According to the chairman of Toy, Joshua Ogol, goods worth 800 million shillings went up in flames. Other leaders saying 1,500 stall owners were affected, that 3/4 of the market was consumed by the blaze.
Mambo last year, wakati soko ilichomeka, viongozi walikuja hapa, walituahidi kwamba wataleta pole zao, watatujengea soko, Wengine wakasema mabati wataleta, mabati hatukuona.
After his eviction from the scene, Governor Sakaja later released a statement condoling with the families, adding that he will extend his full support.
Sisi wamama tuna sauti, hakuna gunisi amefukuza Sakaja, ni sisi. Ndio tumempiga mawe. Usidanganywe.
They say that the fire rescue team did not come to their aid. However, Governor Sakaja said that the first fire engine to respond was vandalized and that it had to go back to station and return to the scene accompanied by others. He went on to add that there were 7 fire incidents in the capital since Friday evening, straining emergency response capacity.
One day after Citizen TV covered the violation of traffic laws in Nairobi's central business district by 2 public service vehicles, the office in charge of traffic, that is the traffic commandant, Mary Omari, has said the issue is under investigation. Ode Francis has the latest.
These are the 2 public service vehicles that Citizen TV flagged after complaints from matatu operators at Railways bus terminus. A day later, Citizen TV returned to Ngong Road to verify the operational status of the matatus in light of the violations revealed by the fellow matatu operators. The matatu was still on the road, unbothered. We followed these matatus and boarded one along Ngong Road. At this location, popularly known as the junction, the matatu was seen dropping passengers on the road and picking up others before leaving. At the Railways matatu terminus, where other PSVs queued to carry passengers, the matatu kept true to form, breaking the rules, reversing to pick up passengers again for the next trip. The National Transport and Safety Authority (NTSA) said the violations were ideally a preserve of the police, who are supposed to enforce the law and detect violations. We reached out to the police traffic commandant, Mary Omari, who said a report on the issue had been submitted to her office and an investigation had been initiated. Some of the issues to be investigated include whether these matatu are registered with a SACCO, if they have a license to operate passengers transport business, and the route they should take, among other matters. This comes after the Matatu Crew Welfare Association announced plans to go on strike next Wednesday, the 7th of August, to protest the violations of law by the 2 matatus and the disadvantage they experienced as a result of these violations. Ode Francis, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
Hundreds of residents of Eldoret Town in Uasin Gishu have been left helpless and counting painful investment losses, running into millions of shillings after a man who claimed to be an online trading guru blinded them by promising them quick riches. The investor, now wanted by the police, established an online trading company named Springmark Investment Limited in Eldoret Town in 2019. After enticing residents with the promise of substantial returns, the investor vanished as abruptly as he had appeared, leaving many in financial distress. With more detail is Ben Curie.
Eldoret Town is increasingly becoming a playground for investment scams. In a recent incident, yet another group of investors has been left reeling from significant losses due to an online trading scam.
Ilikuwa nimeweka milioni 3 kwa Ambrose. Nilienda kwetu, ndugu zangu akanipea pesa zao. Mume wangu pia akanipea pesa yake. Mtoto wangu akanipea pesa yake, nikaongeza pamoja ikakuwa milioni 3. Nikaleta kwa biashara ya Ambrose. Ambrose amepotea na pesa ya wenyewe.
Truly speaking, citizens, Uasin Gishu is becoming Uasin Gishu that we know. It is full of scammers, starting with the political class.
Ambrose Ambuti Makech visited Eldoret Town and established a Springmark Investment Limited in 2019, promising substantial returns to investors. However, the company quickly collapsed, leaving many in financial distress.
Karatasi ndio hii iko na muhuri wa Springmark. Alikuwa amefungwa hapa town ya Eldoret. Watu tulikuwa tunaenda hapo kwa ofisi yake mpaka ako na mashini ya kuhesabu pesa.
Ndio hizi stakabadhi zangu zote ambazo zinaonyesha niliweka pesa huko. Tulikuwa tukipewa 18% every month, 18%. Na baada ya miezi 6 unarudishiwa pesa zako. So baada ya kuweka hizi pesa ikafika mahali ikakwama. Akasema amehakiwa. Ya kwamba forex yake, the trading platform, imehakiwa.
Victims of Makech's scheme revealed that they were enticed by the lucrative deals promoted in local churches. Makech had visited several churches using trusted religious leaders to convince the congregations to invest in his company.
Alikuja kwa makanisa, akakuja kwa mabishop. Akawaambia mabishop, nisaidieni washirika wenu wakuja invest kwa hii kampuni na watapata 18%. Sasa alitumia kanisa ili kupata pesa. Hii watu wengi wenye unaona hapa ni watu wa makanisa ya Eldoret.
Kama ni mtu wa Mungu na alikuwa anashiriki Dominion Church.
Drawn by the promise of high returns, many rushed to take loans to invest in Springmark.
Bila tunaongea saa hizi hivi, big problems. Niko na deni Equity Bank. Na hiyo deni ni kubwa. Bad loans. Hata yenye ninaenda kupigiwa imefika mahali ya kushikiwa auctioneer kuja washike kila kitu mpaka gari.
Hivi nilichukua loan kwa banka ya cooperative, nikachukua Equity. Saa hizi wamekuja kuuza vitu zangu kwa nyumba, watoto wako nyumbani, sina vile nitalipa fees. Mtoto alikuwa anaenda third year Ekadon, saa hizi mtoto hasomi. Mwingine alikuwa kwa KMTC huko Kisumu, saa hizi hasomi. Mwingine alikuwa Maseno, saa hizi mtoto haendi shule. Niko tu nyumbani hivyo.
Familia yote mzima karibu inafika 5 milioni kwa sababu kuna semeji, kuna dada, kuna mama. Tuko wengi kwa familia. Mpaka watoto wetu.
And you know, we Kenyans, I don't know how stupid we are sometimes, but if this person could have been lying to us, we could have known from the first step. The money that we are getting in terms of interest, we were not withdrawing that money. We were taking the same money, we top up to the principal amount in the name of, we know one day, one time, our interest will do what? Will increase.
Victims have resorted to street demonstrations, hoping for justice and the return of their hard-earned money. They accuse authorities of being sluggish in apprehending the suspect.
Tumeenda kwa polisi hatusaidiki. Ambulance anazunguka tu Eldoret kwa magari, amejenga manyumba. Na sisi tunateseka, mimi nateseka huko juu Alsas. Mimi sina pesa ya kutibiwa.
In a phone conversation with one of the victims, Makech pleaded for patience, claiming he was in the process of refunding the over 300 victims.
What I just want to ask you, umenipigia kuniambia niwaambie, are you refunding us ama hakuna pesa?
I've been in hospital for 2.5 months. Nobody knows what I've been doing.
But Ambrose, you could have at least communicated. Communication is a good thing. You are doing it.
Communicate. People communicate. People in the mental unit and there was nothing I could do. Even nimetoka study like 3 weeks back.
Tulikuwa tunaomba tu Mungu ukue hai, mtu asikuue, at least wasikuattack, ifike hii tarehe.
Unaona kama saizi
sasa you come back when it's I can say from my side it's too late.
You know, at the moment there are only two things that can happen. Ikishow up saizi mambo tu ni mawili. Either niwekwe ndani ama niuawe. Those are the two options that are there.
February of this year, a magistrate court in Eldoret ordered the arrest of Makech after he failed to appear in court for a plea in January. He has been in hiding to date. Ben Kirui, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
National Treasury and Economic Planning Cabinet Secretary nominee John Mbadi has taken an about turn on his strong opposition to the Finance Bill of 2024. While appearing for his vetting on Saturday, Mbadi, who voted no to the bill when it was presented in Parliament, told the National Assembly Committee on Appointments that the bill contains valuable revenue-raising measures which should be reintroduced through amendments to the main main bill. But he attributed the downfall of the bill to what he described as inadequate public participation and a poor communication strategy. But he has in the meantime pledged to steer reforms within the Kenya Revenue Authority and to ensure transparency in the public debt management should his appointment sail through. Safin Achengoma reports.
For the record, your name is John Mbadi Ngongo.
While appearing before the National Assembly's Committee on Appointments on Saturday, Cabinet Secretary nominee for the National Treasury and Economic Planning docket, John Mbadi Ngongo, had to face the realities of justifying his desire to join the government, being a member of the opposition.
You know very well, me and you never believed in this bottom-up economy. Now we have found ourselves here. You know what we believed in. You know your principle must guide you. How are you going to marry this?
If you look at the philosophy of UDA and ODM, there is no difference. Actually, the two are social democrats.
Yes.
Better is on value addition.
Yes.
For agriculture, for value addition. ODM, agriculture, for manufacturing. Semantics.
Mbadi also appeared to have softened his hardline stance against the Finance Bill 2024, which he strongly opposed in Parliament and voted to shoot it down just 6 weeks ago.
The good provisions which have been lost by this bill, which are not contentious, and there are many, which can still help this country grow the economy, we can bring them as specific amendments to the Mother Act with proper public participation.
And with the withdrawal of the bill following widespread anti-tax protests, Mbadi says all hope is not lost.
We don't have a lacuna. In fact, Finance Bill is an omnibus amendment bill. We have about 5 or 6 legislations that Finance Bill usually amends. We have excise duty, import duty, we have value-added tax, we have income tax, we have tax procedures acts, and then we have fees and levies. These are specific legislations. Mr. Speaker, this House, if I'm approved, this House should help me bring these legislations directly touching on these specific statutes. We don't have to have a finance bill.
Despite the rejection of the Finance Bill 2024, Mbadi had to justify his optimism by convincing the committee members that he had a plan to fill the country's revenue gap. Top on his priority list will be to steer reforms at the Kenya Revenue Authority.
The way we are recruiting staff at KRA at the moment and deploying them needs to be relooked into. You cannot have people who are not properly trained to collect taxes from people who hire properly trained accountants to calculate their taxes.
Since he joined Parliament in 2008, for about a decade and a half, Mbadi has served in various National Assembly committees, including the Budget and Appropriations Committee, Budget Committee, Public Investment Committee, as well as the Public Accounts Committee.
Thank you.
And we all know you.
He told the Moses Wetangula-led committee that he had the diagnosis of the public debt crisis and knows exactly how to treat it. Mbadi promised to ensure transparency in public debt management.
If Kenyans owe people money, why can't Kenyans know the people they owe money, how much they owe them, and what is the rate, the level of interest for each loan?
Chairman, you see,
he is here as a nominee.
I forgot, Chair.
The seasoned politician who has sat at the helm of leadership within the ODM party and once served as minority leader had a message to critics of political appointments within government.
Being in a political office is just a calling. Actually, it is them who elect us to those offices. It doesn't take away our training, background and professional experience. I have said I've worked for 28 years. I am a professional, just like any other.
If Parliament greenlights his appointment, Mbadi will find a full in tray as he takes over from his predecessor, Njuguna Ndung'u, at a time when repayment of public debt has squeezed the country dry, delaying disbursement of funds for development projects, as well as a high cost of living and a heavy taxation crisis.
Thank you.
Safin Acheng Oma, Citizen TV.
Energy Cabinet Secretary nominee Opiyo Wandayi says he will revoke contracts of independent power producers who he blames for the high cost of electricity in the country. This as Tourism and Wildlife Cabinet Secretary nominee, that is Rebecca Miano, defended the hike in park fees for the Masai Mara Game Reserve, while at the same time pledging to introduce a comprehensive policy guiding the operationalization of short-term stay rentals. You probably knew them as Airbnbs, and she says that would be in a bid to protect the hotel industry. With more details is Seth Olale.
Majority Leader.
Former Leader of Minority in the National Assembly, Opiyo Wandayi, squarely blamed independent power producers for the high cost of electricity in the country over what he termed expensive contractual agreements.
Tried from time immemorial.
The Energy Cabinet Secretary nominee, who is worth 430 million shillings, informing the Appointments Vetting Committee that he, in conjunction with the Office of the Attorney General, will terminate such contracts.
And you find that licenses for a number of those sites have been given to private entities, these so-called IPPs, a number of whom are not utilizing the sites. They have kept them for purposes of speculation. And therefore starving KenGen, which has got excess capacity of opportunities to generate more power.
However, the former Leader of Minority was non-committal on the increment in the controversial road maintenance levy through the pump, stating that the move involves the roads ministry.
I, Rebecca Miano,
appearing before the same committee, Cabinet Secretary nominee for Tourism and Wildlife, Rebecca Miano, who is worth 444 million, defended the hike in park fees for Masai Mara Game Reserve, at the same time pledging to introduce a comprehensive policy guiding the operationalization of short-term stay rentals in a bid to protect the hotel industry.
We have not managed to convince the population that tourism is not only for visitors arriving from other countries, but we can do better in local tourism. But when you start that discussion, many Kenyans feel the hotels are expensive, other tourist attractions are expensive, and therefore there is quite a lot of room for us to position Kenya and rethink our strategies so that we are competitive in terms of monetary, in terms of product.
Trade and Investment Cabinet Secretary nominee Salim Vuria, pledging to address the high cost of power and land acquisition for local manufacturers, which he blames for expensive operational costs in running businesses.
When we buy Kenya and build Kenya. So in this front, I'll be activating the Ken Invest and the Kenya branding agency to ensure that we promote the local products.
The immediate former CS for Mining, Blue Economy and Maritime Affairs told the parliamentary vetting panel that his net worth is 158 million shillings. Seth Olale, Citizen TV.
Sports Cabinet Secretary nominee Kipchumba Murkomen was hard-pressed to defend his tenure when he served at the transport docket. The vetting panel questioned Murkomen on the controversial lease of the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport to an Indian-based firm for renovations. And as Stephen Leto reports, the nominee assured Parliament that he will turn around the sports docket should he be approved.
A one-time football captain in Parliament, Kipchumba Murkomen was today being vetted by his former colleagues for the position of CS Youth Affairs, Creative Economy and Sports.
I have taken note that the CS nominee, last time we vetted him here under your chairmanship. And I've seen he has just come with the same suit that he came with that time. I have the picture with me here in my...
Maybe that's his attire of luck.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing, Mr. Speaker. Maybe.
So help me God.
Speaker Moses Wetangula signaling the start of a lengthy session with members of the vetting committee.
Waziri, from your previous office, please put it very clear to this committee. What is this matter of Adani and Jomo Kenyatta Airport? When did you travel to India? Whom did you go? What is the content of the letter? Everything. We want to know whether the Jomo Kenyatta Airport is still Kenyan Airport or it is now Mumbai International Airport.
Did you or did you not sell our airports?
I have not, and I do not have the capacity to enter into any PPP as a person, as a cabinet secretary. And I have not in any way sold the airport.
The Committee on Appointments further proposes handling of the leaking JKIA roof that put East Africa's leading international airport to shame.
Your removal from roads transport to Ministry of Sports use, do you see it as a demotion?
I don't see any ministry to be different from the other.
The sports nominee assured the Moses Wetangula-led team that he was not only good on the road, he is better in the field.
There is a problem, a serious problem, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to sports management in this country. And Mr. Speaker, what is also worse is that there is a collaboration. And unfortunately, as an officer of the court, I have to say this. There is a collaboration between these organizations and, Mr. Speaker, court orders. If you find why the AK has never held elections for 12 years, it's because they are perpetuating themselves using a court order.
The vetting continues tomorrow with the Mining Cabinet Secretary nominee Ali Hassan Joho taking the first seat before the panel. Stephen Letos, Citizen TV.
We take a break on Citizen Weekend, but just a reminder who we will be in conversation with tonight. We have Professor Macharia Munene, a historian. We also have Professor David Monda, political scientist. He'll be joining us virtually from New York. Thank you for keeping it Citizen Weekend. Right from Kenya's independence, the occupants of the office of the Vice President or Deputy President, as it is now known, haven't enjoyed smooth sailing. And while things may have changed with a joint presidential ticket, the more they stayed the same. What is the cure then when the presidency is pulling in different directions? A marching set before there was Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto's marching red ties. There was Jomo Kenyatta and Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, Kenya's first president and vice president, in their matching beaded caps. But the love affair in both cases was not to stand the test of time. A difference in ideology setting Kenyatta and Odinga on a collision course on whether to set Kenya on the socialist path or a capitalist one. In his book, Not Yet Uhuru, Jaramogi writing of his humiliations as vice president. On United Nations Day 1965, I was present at the commemorative meeting when a minister appeared to represent the president and to take the salute in the presence of myself as vice president. Ultimately, Odinga backed into a corner by the 1966 Limuru Conference, where his influence in the ruling party was diminished with the creation of 8 vice chairpersons, forcing him to resign as vice president, and leading to the creation of the Kenya People's Union and a festering of hostilities that led to the Kisumu massacre of 1969, when a visit by Jomo Kenyatta on the hills of Tom Mboya's death turned bloody. It is a theme that has reverberated throughout Kenya's history. Kenya's second president, Daniel Toroitich arap Moi too, suffered humiliating scenes when he served as Kenyatta's second in command. Frustrated by the so-called Kiambu Mafia, there was even an attempt to change the constitution to prevent the VP from automatically assuming office in the event of the president's death. There were at least 2 documented incidents of his being slapped in front of President Kenyatta at State House Nakuru by then Rift Valley Provincial Police Commissioner James Mungai. Those who served under Moi as vice president could not rest on their laurels either. George Saitoti, Moi's longest-serving VP, found himself in the political cold after the 1997 general election when Moi left him hanging for over a year when he failed to reappoint him as his second-in-command after 8 years of serving as his deputy. He also suffered a rude shock when he suffered a fate similar to Jaramogi's, and it became clear during the KANU National Delegates Conference of March 18th, 2002 that the ambitions he harbored to succeed Moi were not shared. Kalonzo Musyoka could commiserate with Saitoti as he too failed to secure a much-coveted endorsement from successor Mwai Kibaki, who had himself served as vice president under Moi. A whole constitutional dispensation later, and the divisions that saw Uhuru Kenyatta campaign against his deputy William Ruto as successor now dog the Ruto-Gachagua administration less than 2 years in office. With Gachagwa's staff under scrutiny in connection with the month-long protests that shook Ruto's administration to its foundation, and with a reported plot in the offing for Gachagwa's impeachment. All right, as I mentioned earlier, I am joined in studio by historian Professor Macharia Munene. We also have joining us from across the pond, as it's referred to at times, is Professor David Mwanda, and he is a political scientist. I'll start with you, Professor Macharia Munene. What do you make of that report? Has there been a thread running right through independence where those who occupy the seat of the deputy president or vice president are often frustrated men?
Well, they appear to be frustrated. But what usually happens is when there is a difference of opinion as to which direction the country should go. That was the initial problem, actually, between Jomo Kenyatta and Jaramogi. It was a time of anxiety. Kenya was just coming from a very rough period, the Mau Mau War, and there was concern everywhere whether there will be violence now that the supposed leader of the Mau Mau was becoming president. And what you had was a lot of effort by people, the new team, to prove that they are not going to behave like the Mau Mau. And so there's no revolutionary rhetoric at all. That's one side. Then you have another group that was saying the way things are, you've been so much under the Western influence that you need to change direction to balance up. And maybe there was a lot of talk about socialism, a lot of talk. And the question was, will Kenya go socialistic way or will it go capitalistic way? Now, Kenyatta and his team, which included Tom Mboya, Kibaki, Moi Kibaki, and Angaine, and Sagini, a whole team were nowhere anywhere near socialist in their mind or in reality. And you have here another team saying we need to recognize the revolutionary legacy of the Mau Mau, so which was scaring people. So we had that ideological argument. In fact, very few of those people were socialists in reality. Jaramogi was not a socialist, but he talked it, a few one or two. So the issue was which direction should the country go. And that's where Kenyatta and Jaramogi quarreled.
Okay. And the next stage then would be, although there was it Murumbi who came in after Jaramogi?
Yes.
And then thereafter we had Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi.
Yes.
But for Daniel, Professor Mwanda, I was surprised to learn that there was a police commissioner who reportedly slapped him at least twice, that he would be stopped at roadblocks, that he would be kept waiting when going to see the president. Why do we have this history of, quote unquote, the president's men frustrating those who occupy the office as the second in command?
So I think you need to understand the historical context of the time, because the post-independence period was really very much about Kenyatta and Kenyatta consolidating his rule. And there was a strong feeling within the cabal that was around Jomo Kenyatta that the country, the rulership of the country should not leave central Kenya, right? Should not leave the mountain. So part of that ethnic chauvinism is then encapsulated in this kind of disrespect to the Vice President Daniel Moi. Also, don't forget that a lot of these elites, the Kikuyu elites that were around President Kenyatta, really looked down on Daniel Moi as a passing cloud. Not only because he was considered from a small ethnic community in Rift Valley, the Tugen, but also that his level of education, his preparation for the job, they just didn't feel was up to par. So there's a lot of effort to not only frustrate him, but to humiliate him. And this is then, brought forward with the Change the Constitution movement in the latter years of Kenyatta's presidency, when it looked like Kenyatta was, becoming senile, he was getting old, and he wasn't very, very much in control of his facilities. There was this strong move to change the Constitution to ensure that power would not leave Mount Kenya. So it's a whole variation of these dynamics, and strong ethnic dynamic, but also very much a personality and an elite dynamic, where people look down on Moi as not having the academic, intellectual, and bourgeoisie gravitas to mingle it out with the elites in Kenya. You disagree, Professor Macharia?
Well, not entirely. See, it's a big narrative. Eh? There were movements to change the constitution whenever it was felt that Kenyatta was about to go. So what happened in the 70s was actually a repeat of what happened in the late 60s. And if you look at the constitution, the way it was crafted in 1964, the Republican Constitution, it was essentially anti-Jaramogi. And the reason was because Kenyatta was supposed to die anytime. And the question was who will take over when he dies. Initially, it looked at it as if it was a contest between Jaramogi and Tom Mboya. And Mboya was in charge of the constitution just before the Republican status. And the constitution made it very clear that should there be a vacancy, the sitting vice president will not become the automatic president or acting whatever. Now, that, when Jaramogi was kicked out or shown the door, and he went to create his own party, then the attitude gravitated around now, what did the constitution say? Because in 1967 or 68, Kenyatta had a heart attack. And there was a question was, who is going to take over? And the way it was, Mboya was going to take over. By persuading parliament and persuading the cabinet, because he could talk, the guy could talk. So they changed the constitution. And who was sitting at the vice presidential place? Moi was sitting there. And it says, now should that happen, the sitting vice president will be acting president for 3 months. And then you can have an election. 68 was the real serious issue because it did change the constitution. Then, once Moi was sitting there, a few years later, again it looked as if Kenyatta was going. Eh? And so you had that, movement of which failed. People were reminded about what failed, not what succeeded. In 68 it succeeded. In 75, 76 it failed. And there is debate which side was Kenyatta on this issue. There is a big debate. Kenyatta was always for Moi. And there are stories you can tell about it, that when he looked at the people around him, the jokers, he had not, he thought Moi was a better what? So Moi was a very crafty politician. He had been in parliament longer than anybody, from 1955. All the others found him there. So he knew how to play games. And even when he was Home Minister for Home Affairs and Jaramogi was the Vice President, he himself used to harass Jaramogi.
Really?
Yes. So, I mean, it's... so
in what sense?
See, even an aeroplane can be told to stop for a while. So,
oh, okay, I get it.
you know, I mean, there are those things that were happening. So it's a problem that was there. And so what I'm saying is that Moi was a very crafty politician. He knew how to play his game. What people talk about, 76, was just a repeat that failed. Because there was a serious change in the Constitution in 1968. The one that abolished independent candidates. The one that said that you must be a member of a political party in order to do what? To be a candidate. The one that introduced detention without trial. The one that they even tried to change the age for becoming president from 35 to 40. Because Tom Mboya was about 39. Eh? So then they took away, I mean, what are you people doing? So that changed the Constitution, succeeded. Mm-hmm. The one people talk about but failed.
Okay, Professor Monda, you'd like to come in at that point?
Sure. I think whereas that is true, ultimately politics is about power. And if we really think about that, the period, for example, 68 that Daktari is talking about, we have to understand there were three dynamics going on. There was the ideological competition between Jaramogi and Mzee Kenyatta. There was a personality conflict between the two of them because Jaramogi felt as much of a national leader as Jomo, but there was also the broader question of the ethnicity, the ethnic component between Jaramogi and Jomo Kenyatta. So yes, there were obviously changes to change the constitution, but those changes to change the constitution were to maintain the hegemony of a particular ethnic group from a particular region, in the event also of consolidating power for Jomo Kenyatta. Because at that time, in the late 60s, the move to have 8 vice presidents was to weaken the influence of Jaramogi. But also, it was the ethnic dynamic was also to weaken the influence of the Luo nation, which was seen to be in direct conflict or in competition with elites from Central Province. So we have to really think about that centralization of power that Jomo Kenyatta was involved in, not only in terms of constitutional changes to ensure there was no VP, but those constitutional changes are being done for a purpose. And we know in Kenya, we organize around ethnic constituencies. So as much as you change the constitution, you're not just changing it to make a Republican constitution more centralized in terms of power of the president, but you are ultimately entrenching power to safeguard the interests of a dominant elite. And we know at independence, this dominant elite was from Central Kenya. And it's replicated in terms of the 70s and the later 70s when you think about the land schemes and who got land in Rift Valley, which is part of the problem of the land redistribution we have today. You think about it in terms of the cabinet appointments, but then you later think about it also in terms of elites then looking later to change the constitution in the late 70s to attempt to ensure that power remained within the elites. And it happened that those elites were from Central Kenya. And lastly, I might add that out of the 12 vice presidents we've had, 5 have been from Central Kenya. So this really tells you that this is a very key constituency for whoever's going to be president. You have to have your pinballs correctly aligned in Central Kenya, or you need to split the vote of that region in order to make to continue in power. And that's something Daniel Mo is very good at doing.
All right. We'll continue the conversation and the parallels that we can draw to the events of today. On the other side of this break, we continue. Professor Macharia Munene, Professor David Monda. All right. Welcome back to Citizen Weekend. We have Professor Macharia Munene in the studio, and we'll have also joining us from across the pond, Professor David Monda. There's something interesting, Professor Munene, that Prof. Monda said just before the break, and he was saying we might have changed the constitution, but the dynamics remain essentially the same in that there's still a need for ethnic, having the numbers, mobilization.
There is a small element of truth in that. I think the ethnic narrative has been overplayed in almost everything. It becomes an excuse for ignoring other factors in the whole. In the whole. It's not to say that it does not exist. It exists. But to overplay it is to miss the point. And if you look at the first dispute, Jomo and Jaramogi, it was really an ideological dispute. Which direction does the country go? And that's why even Jaramogi's successor was also booted out. Murumbi was booted out in about a year. And there was a difference of opinion. And so there is that need to are the players compatible. If they are not compatible, then there's going to be some problem. There is also an issue of expectation between the two people. When one expects one thing and the other expects a different thing, then you have a problem. It turns out that Daniel Moi was very good at gauging the moment and playing his cards well. There's no time when Moi ever appeared as if it was a challenge to Kenyatta. There never was. He knew how to play his cards, just the way he knew how to play his cards during the colonial times. So, but we have had instances. Jaramogi looked as if he was challenging his boss. And even we are alluding to what's going on right now. There is an impression that Gachagua is challenging the boss. They have different sort of expectations. And they have not played their cards very well, both of them. But clearly you see this is different expectations. And it's playing out. In part, because both of them feel they are prima donnas. Just like Jaramogi and Kenyatta were both prima donnas. And if you look at Uhuru and Ruto, they both felt their weight, because they had come together and cut a deal. So they were both important. No one was subordinate to the other. So when you have the president who has one expectation and a deputy who has a different expectations, they are bound to collide somewhere. And that happened in a very nasty way. The same thing now here, we are seeing it. Of course, there can be excuses, this and this and this. But it's a conflict of expectations. The president expects one thing. The deputy seems to expect something else. And they both are ambitious young men, comparatively young. They're ambitious, and the ambitions collide. And then they are played out. And sometimes when they are being played out, that's when the ethnic card comes in, as a way of trying to say, hey, no, it's this. What are we hearing now? We are hearing that kind of thing. Oh, those who are saying the Ruto should get out, then I say, no, don't do that. Because if he gets out, Gachagua will get in.
All right.
So cut out that thing. We look at the expectations, the personalities, and the fact that they are all prima donnas, they collide.
Okay.
When you don't have prima donnas, there's very little collision.
Professor Monda, so we are under a new constitutional dispensation, essentially, and we still witness the same. Is this what a joint ticket was meant to cure?
I think the joint ticket was meant to facilitate a balancing of two players, right? So the idea was, or let me take it back a little bit. If you look at the pre-2010 constitution, particularly in the Nyayo era, particularly with Daniel Moi, he used this VP card to essentially play off central Kenya against the other parts of the country. Now, I'm not saying ethnicity is the only factor. I'm saying it's a major factor. But the issue now with the post-2010 constitution is that we are not under the era of the one-party state, and I think the democratic space has really been increased. So yes, the new constitution was supposed to change that dynamic of using the VP spot as as a carrot or as a manipulative stick to aggregate power or to facilitate access to power. But we can still see that even under the new constitution, the presidents are still able to use the VP spot as a bargaining chip in terms of political mobilization. So if you look at the last election, both of the VP candidates, Martha Karua and Rigathi Gachagua, were from central Kenya. So again, as much as things are changing, but the dynamics are still remaining the same. And I must add that it's not even been halfway through President Ruto's administration, but it's a really it's a really complicated political dynamic because you have multiple players at the table. What has happened? President Ruto has introduced Raila Amolo Odinga into the conversation. Nobody knows what President Ruto has agreed with Raila Odinga. Rigathi Gachagua doesn't know what President Ruto is planning to do in 2027 or between now and 2027. President Ruto has also dangled the Musalia Mudavadi, right, as another power player. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this government governs, because will it be another Nusum Kate government where you have everyone pulling on all sides? But apparently, obviously, the new constitution has not solved the issue of ethnic mobilization and aggregation around the VP spot. And our current VP has not helped the situation either, because he constantly keeps speaking like a DO from Rift Valley rather than a vice president of Kenya, when he keeps talking about him, the government having shareholders and him protecting the interests of a certain region. That is really not the way a vice president is supposed to be speaking, and that really re-entrenches this element of ethnicity, because the next vice president then feels that if I come in and from Ukambani, or I'm from the Milembo community, or I'm from the Giriama, that I have to take care of my constituency. And that's really not good for a national outlook, particularly a leader who's supposed to have a more broad vision of the country rather than the parochial view of an MP or an MCA. A VP is supposed to take care of interests of all Kenyans, not to be talking about those that voted for me as having shares in the government and those that didn't vote for me not having shares. I think this really re-entrenches that ethnic element in terms of how we determine the VP position.
All right. With threats hanging over Gachagua's head of impeachment, this administration seems to be going much earlier than the previous one. Seems to be pulling in different directions. What then is the cure, Prof? Should it be, should we go back to the old system? I was reading that Moi kept Saitoti hanging after serving as VP for 8 years. He had to wait a whole other year after the 1997 elections to resume the office.
First, the 2010 constitution, some provisions were simply anti-Moi, like saying you have two people running on the same ticket. To stop Moi from shifting people. I don't think it has worked very well, because now you have a president who wishes they could go back to the old ways, so that he can drop the man and have somebody else. And now the only way out is an impeachment, which is going nowhere, because it's a joke when you look at it, what's the ground for this. But they think that if they do that, then something will be. And somebody pointed out, since they ran together as a ticket, you impeach one, you impeach both. So it's not going very far. But what's the way out? is that the two men have to grow up and then stop behaving like children in the way. And of course, sometimes it appears as if Gachagua is the one who is behaving more like a child than the other guy. Because Gachagua's problems is not that he's a Kikuyu. That's not a problem. But the way he speaks raises questions about maturity. And it was seen right on the day of inauguration. And people wondered, what's wrong with this man? When somebody is down, you don't beat him up and then think you are doing well, you smile up. No, you appear just to be a bully and not thinking very well. So, and people pointed out, what's wrong with you? So he failed that test on that day. And from that time, he's been trying very hard, extremely hard, to be accepted as a leader of the mountain. He's been having problems. Of course, recently, when it appears as if he was a victim, he's been gaining some traction, yeah? But still there is that lingering question of his maturity as a leader. And until he shows that he's mature, then he's going to continue having problems. But essentially, it's the two men have to grow up and start misleading the country or doing something that is unbecoming. That's my way of looking at it.
Okay.
Yes.
Professor Monda, have the last word. How do we break the curse?
How we break the curse, I think, as Professor Munene has said, is a question about leadership, right? If it really shouldn't matter, ideally, who's president or who's vice president, as long as they're delivering the goods. But we do understand that we live in a political context where ethnicity is a major element of mobilization. And I think going forward, it's really for Kenyans to decide to start to think more about the leaders they elect to office, but also more appropriately, and I think this hasn't been emphasized enough. The most powerful institution is not even the president or vice president, it's parliament. And I think our parliamentarians need to be more than just rubber stamps of what the executive and the deputy executive want. They really also need to check the president and make sure that the president serving the broad needs of the whole Kenyan constituency, the vice president serving the broad needs of the whole Kenyan constituency. Because right now, if you impeach the VP, it's a joint ticket. It's extremely problematic. So you really need mature heads at the helm of the ticket. And I think it's really important then to have Parliament to really do its job. When it's vetting, really vet these people and not just move through a cycle of public relations when there's really no vetting being done. People are not really being asked how they made their money. And no investigations are done within committees. So I think that's another element of how we need to check the VP position from Parliament and from the other arms of government.
All right, thank you very much, Professor David Monda, speaking to us from New York, political scientist. We also have in studio Professor Macharia Munene, a historian. We put a pin in that conversation, but it continues online. The handles are at O Burrows. At Prof, when was the last time you posted on X? It was a while back.
No, I've not posted for a long time.
Yeah, well, but
I still have to learn how to do it properly.
All right. But follow him as he learns. Prof Macharia, at Prof Macharia. And we also have at Monda Prof. I got it right?
Yes.
Awesome.
Spot on.
All right. The Raptor Road residents.
I'll be taking the fan mail off of X, you know, but so please tell people to be nice to me.
All right. Please be nice to the professor. The Raptor Road Residents Association has condemned the construction of high-rise buildings within Kileleshwa. Speaking today after a public participation session organized by the developer, who they claim has grabbed the land along Mkoko Close Road, the area member of County Assembly, Robert Lai, said the high-rise buildings will cause congestion in the area in the coming days. The public participation forum sought a clarification on the legal ownership of the land by the developer company. The residents now claim that the land is public property.
To the leadership of the Kuwait embassy, and they have confirmed that this property, they handed it over back to the Kenyan government. It should remain a public property. way it changed from public to private is not clear. So residents are demanding to be told clearly how it changed from public to private.
The people who are doing high-rise, there is no law that is giving them permission to construct more than 5 floors. So when they come and do that one, it's to our disadvantage.
We cannot bring in more population to actually, suffice the area, the space that we have.
360 Climate Institute today launched a talent search event aimed at empowering the youth locally. Held in Murang'a County, the event encouraged young people from across the county to pursue technical courses as a pathway to secure their future and achieve self-reliance. Daniel Thiongo, the CEO of 360 Climate Institute, emphasized the importance of acquiring technical skills. Speaking during the talent search at a local university where students and alumni showcased their expertise, Thiongo said the institution offers vocational training programs to empower young people with practical skills. Thiongo pointed out that 360 Climate Institute, sponsored by an NGO, provides free courses to all interested individuals regardless of their academic background. He urged the youth to seize the opportunity to gain marketable skills that are in high demand in today's job market. The institute seeks to offer life skills to help students earn a sustainable living through technical and vocational pathways.
Things for the long.
What is most important in life today is to learn a skill, and a skill you can apply and utilize to change your life. Most of our youth who we are training currently at 360 Climate Institutes are youth who did not have hope to either join any tertiary colleges. We have youth who could not have joined secondary school.
Nilipoingia katika hii shule ya 360 wameweza kunisaidia hata kurekodi wimbo yangu ambayo inaitwa Magongona, na ninaona ya kwamba hata kama nimezeeka, hii talanta itanisaidia hata kujiendeleza kimaisha na pia kuinua wengine.
I'm doing IT, that is information technology. I have been learning graphic design, artificial intelligence, I also web development. I have been here for about 6 months now, and for now I can design, make designs, make banners.